Hey guys, this is Justice, welcoming you back to my channel, and today this will be the first episode of my new series, The Horror Behind, where I'm going to be covering different films that had a whole bunch of controversies backing them, or were inspired heavily by true events. I plan on delving into the controversies that led to being huge talking points, or the vice versa, that I plan on explaining the real life events that heavily inspired the film before ultimately talking about the movie. If you guys like this series, you should let me know in the comments down below. But today we're going to be covering the 2020 film My Valentine. It was created for the Into the Dark series, which was a very short-lived TV show that they had on Hulu created by Blumhouse. Every single episode was essentially a full-length movie that was inspired by a different holiday that co-related with that month. That episode obviously related to My Valentine. I just rewatched it recently and it reignited a whole bunch of stuff that I remembered reading about ages ago when the movie came out, and I wanted to talk about it here with you guys. Content warning before we get too far into this video. I'm going to try not to go too much into detail about stuff that happens in the real life events and the movie on this stuff, like gloss over it, I suppose. But I want to give a warning to anyone that might be sensitive watching this video. This is very heavily about abusive relationships, so if that's something that you can't handle or you don't feel comfortable watching, then by all means, click away from the video. Nobody's forcing you to be here, and I don't want anyone to be uncomfortable watching something that they can't handle. And I just wanted to get that out of the way before we got into any of this so I didn't blindside anyone as they were watching this video. Now, the film My Valentine, as I said, was released in 2020, and it follows Valentine, whose music and artistic identity have been stolen by her ex-boyfriend, Royal, and pasted onto his new girlfriend, slash prodigy, Treasure. Locked together in a small concert venue after hours, the three of them confront the emotional abuses of the past until things turn violent. The moment that the trailer dropped for this film, a lot of people immediately took notice to the fact that the movie was very much inspired by the case that was going on currently at the time with Mars Argo, Poppy, and Titanic Sinclair that have been drugged into courts. And if you guys haven't heard about that, because it happened a very long time ago at this point, I mean, it was only roughly 5 years ago, but in the internet that might as well be decades ago. So I figured I would go over and explain to you that case and let you know what happened with that first and foremost. If you don't remember Poppy, she was an internet figure who blew up around 2014 for her robotic videos where she talked in this monotone voice, who also had this aura of mystery behind her because nobody knew who she was aside from these videos that she was releasing, and a lot of people found her to be creepy and ominous. I personally thought she was cool. She ended up going on to release all this very satirical pop music that my little gay ass self got so obsessed with when I was in high school, which eventually led to her own spin on like bubblegum pop, like heavy metal music, and those two genres shouldn't work, and most people might say they don't, but I'm not most people, and honestly, pop off, queen. Before you had Poppy, though, you had Mars Argo, who was in a relationship with Titanic Sinclair before he ended up creating the project that he did with Poppy. And there is a lot of similarities between the two acts, and for very good or bad reason, I would say, especially as I get into it, of what Titanic ultimately ended up doing to Mars Argo. But when you look at their videos, you see that they both have very similar videos. In fact, you can very much tell that there was ideas from the original Mars Argo act that Titanic Sinclair ripped off when he later started a relationship and started working with Poppy as well.
Delete your Facebook. Delete your Facebook.
Mars Argo also was trying to start a music career, although hers never blew up in the way that Poppy's did. And I don't think that's through any fault of her own. I don't think she really had a chance to flourish with what she was trying to do. But she was very much an alternative pop singer who also did satirical music, much like Poppy. And her most popular song, Using You, is total bop. and makes me wish that we would have gotten more music by her. The song even ended up trending on TikTok years later, to which Mars Argo was very much surprised by, and she's very much out of the public spotlight now, which you'll understand why as I keep going. But all she had to say to that was weird as fuck when she was asked about it on Tumblr. She doesn't really do anything with music anymore. And I think it has all to do between the deterioration of her relationship with her partner and bandmate that led to her wanting to step away from the spotlight and not be a part of any of that stuff anymore. And I personally don't blame her one bit for that. It was around 2013 while Mars Argo and Titanic Sinclair were still together, where Mars Argo noted that Titanic was starting to tell her that she wasn't going to make it in the music scene without him, that she was essentially nothing without him, and was constantly gaslighting her. This ultimately led to them breaking up in 2014. They tried to continue the band briefly after this, but that also inevitably came to an end as well. But during all of this, Titanic started to jump ship without her anyways, and started to create the brand of Poppy. He even hired a new girl to replicate the image of Mars Argo. It's very noticeable. You can see it in the hair. Argo even noted on this later in court documents that when she first met the actress that plays Poppy, that she was a brunette. But then once she signed on to play said character with Sinclair, that she cut her hair in a similar fashion and dyed it bleach blonde just like hers was. The end of the band and the relationship was entirely caused by emotional and psychological abuse, all done by Titanic Sinclair. Even after the breakup, he continued to harass Mars Argo. He started to let any of their friends know and anyone and Ooh, ooh. My door just cracked open because of the wind, and that gave me the biggest heart attack. Oh shit. Ooh, now that my nerves are back together. Following the breakup, Sinclair refused to leave Mars Argo alone. He started to stalk her, and then he started to slander her name to friends and people in the industry, spreading false information about her to essentially kill her career and reputation with everyone. And he even ended up breaking into her house after she had blocked him. She eventually ended up leaving LA altogether and put anything and everything to do with music to the side, and very much stepped out of the media spotlight, and we did not hear from her for a while after this. Not long after this though, Poppy blew up on YouTube, and Mars Argo fans started to notice these similarities between Poppy and Argo's acts, and we're starting to question it, and all the weird Easter eggs that were thrown in the content that seemed almost like flashbacks to other videos of Mars Argo, which people thought was weird and were speculating on like what the connections were. And I will admit, like when I was in high school, I was very much one of those people that was speculating like what those connections were too, because I was very invested in everything and anything to do with Poppy. I just didn't realize, and I don't think most other people realized as well, that there was a lot more of a darker thing surrounding that the entire time, and it all ended up coming back to Sinclair. In 2018, Mars Argo filed a lawsuit against both Sinclair and Poppy for stealing her brand and her image, and she further sued Sinclair as well for continued psychological abuse, for essentially turning another girl into her clone and then continuing to create the exact same kind of material that him and her had been creating as well originally. Sinclair tried shooting back and tried saying that Mars Argo had no creative input essentially for the entire persona of the band and the character and the YouTube videos they released, and that it all came from inside of his very big, very smart head, and I think he is full of shit, and he is a piece of shit. Lawsuit was ultimately dropped, but fortunately for Mars Argo, in 2021, she was able to copyright and get her name back and her persona essentially so that no one else could use it. Now, we're going to flash back a couple years from 2021 back to 2019, and this is about the exact same time that Titanic and Poppy ended up breaking up, which this also led to him no longer being connected to anything to do with her music anymore, as well as she continued to do her career and still continues to create and drop music to this day. After their split, a lot came out that was very similar to what Mars Argo was saying happened to her. Poppy started talking about how he psychologically abused her. He used to shame her for how she looked, and he even tried taking credit for everything that she became as well. He ended up leaking pictures of her with no makeup and demos of songs that she wasn't ready to release after the breakup. And he's just such a fucking messy person, and I really, really wish that bastard would get in some kind of trouble for what he's done before he moves on to the next girl that gets put in the exact same situation. But at the same rate too, bastards like that never learn. It seems like I love to believe that people can change, but I don't think he's one of those guys. He also may have had songwriting credits and directing credits on her videos, but the fact that Poppy is still creating music and is still in the zeitgeist, I think it just goes to show that he isn't as big and bad as he thinks he is, because he tried taking all creative integrity in other interviews as well from Poppy. And honestly, how much of a loser do you gotta be? When you break up with somebody, why do you need to burn their image every time? You've done it to 2 girls already, dude. Move on. Your red flags just showing everywhere. We just need the red flag guy to run right through this video, right about now, because no thank you. All of these events, though, are what ultimately led to the film My Valentine being created. And from the synopsis I gave earlier, I feel like you guys should probably be able to see the similarities from what I was saying. But the film follows Valentine, who is very much a stand-in for Mars Argo, who is trying to get back up on her feet after this very toxic relationship that she was in with Royal, who was both her partner and her manager, essentially, who worked with her on trying to release her music. But it was a very toxic, tumultuous relationship. And when she stepped away from all of that, he ended up taking away her image and pasting it onto another girl, giving her all of her old demos and having her sing them, but then saying that they wrote them together instead of Valentine, and even had her get a similar haircut, or, sorry, the exact same haircut as Valentine. Apparently, they just don't look alike, and she's crazy, which is totally not gaslighting, right?
You recreated me on your body. You need some serious therapy.
After the release of his new girlfriend Treasure's album and its success, they need to write more music, but they don't have more music, and they can't come up with anything. And Royal feels like Treasure isn't a good writer, and he berates her for it throughout the film as he continues the same cycle of abuse that he placed onto Valentine, onto Treasure as well. They end up going to this club where Valentine is performing her music, as Treasure fans heckle her for stealing Treasure's music, even though it is rightfully her music in the first place. And while they're there, they get everybody to leave the bar so that it's essentially only Treasure, Valentine, and Royal alone in this bar together. And he starts to try to blackmail her into creating more music, and also tries to get her into falling into old habits that she was in the relationship, as he starts to treat her in exact ways that he used to back when they were still together. Eventually, this very quickly leads to Royal becoming completely unhinged, as he starts to kill people with no good reason or explanation, essentially only really because he's not getting what he wants from Valentine, who is struggling to have a voice against him after all of the trauma that he's put her through. This all leads into a bloody climax where you have Valentine trying to reclaim her power that Royal has taken from her, and finally try to take over her own career once again. Now, if you noticed, I didn't really get into a whole lot of details about this movie on the plot, spoilers, the kills. I don't want to do that here because I don't think enough people have seen this movie. I don't think it's a masterpiece by any means, but this is a really, really fun movie, I think. And it's streaming on Hulu still, so you guys should go watch it. things that I really enjoyed about this movie is it's very artistically done. I enjoy a lot of the lighting in this film. You have this neon color palette shown over essentially the entire movie where it just feels otherworldly. And then you have like all these little graphics that pop up on the screen and like the way that scenes are edited at times. It feels very Scott Pilgrim versus the World to me in many ways. And two, this movie is about pop stars at the end of the day, and you can't have a movie about pop stars without having some original pop music to throw in there for their acts. And I think they do a really good job selling that they're actual singers. They actually got this girl, she's on YouTube, Dressage, I think is how you pronounce her name, but she is the girl that plays Valentine. She's also the one who sings the music in this film. So future Justice popping in, I was completely mistaken. Dressage does not play Valentine. Valentine's actually played by Britt Barron. Dressage did still write the song The Knife, and you can still find her on YouTube. She's even replied back to some people asking questions, saying how she came up with ideas for the meanings behind the song and the darker edge to the lyrics, which I thought was kind of cool that she was so active with her fans. Another fun factoid to prove small horror world is Anna Cole, who plays Treasure, is also going to be in the new Final Destination movie and has casted to be in the new Black Phone. So I guess keep an eye out for her. She might be a new up-and-comer in New Age horror.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
And she has a very good voice. I love the song that you have at the opening film, The Knife. I think it's a very catchy, fun pop anthem in many ways. And then also to backtrack a little bit on the lighting, we have those neon scenes that I was talking about, but randomly the film will cut to these more gritty, realistic, muted looking scenes as you see Royal unravel more and more and start doing more messed up things and murdering people. And it's very much, in my opinion, showing Royal's true colors. Throughout the film as well, you get these flashbacks that use the exact same muted color palette where it shows different times between him and Valentine when they were still together and the abuse and the gaslighting that he inflicted upon her. And it's scenes like that I think are very hard to watch at some points. Also just makes you want to see him fail that much more as the movie continues. And that's something that I do enjoy about this movie is I think it balances being this like campy fun flick with this like ultra serious topic. And I feel like it knows when to be campy with it and it knows when to be fun with it. And I think that they did a really good job with that balancing act at the end of the day. On the campy tones with Treasure, you do have serious moments with her, but overall, I would describe her character as being more of the comedic relief in this film. She says like a lot of really quirky, stupid lines, and she also talks in this like really high-pitched, whiny voice constantly. And honestly, like she just cracks me up so much as she's going on in this movie. In many points, like she kind of reminds me of like Parker Posey in like Scream. She feels like almost out of place in this movie, but like in the best ways possible. One thing that I think is really great about this movie too, and I want to throw in there that I do think that like I did give that warning earlier, the trigger warning for this film. I do think though that if you have been in a relationship like that and you survived anything remotely like that this movie does a good job of touching on those subjects without being insensitive and without going too far there as well. Coming from someone who has been in a toxic relationship before that was very unhealthy, it did feel very validating, a lot of the stuff that Valentine goes through and says and how she thinks about stuff in this film. And I very much enjoy her character growth through this entire movie. I think that's done expertly well as the film continues and shows that you are more than what you were inside of the abusive relationship. That like, yes, you might mean nothing in that moment and you might think that, but that doesn't make it true, and that you should remember what you were before that and rebuild the pieces and take back your identity, which is easier said than done, and it takes a lot of work. And I love the way that they touch on that message in the film. That's a part of the reason I don't think this film was being gratuitous in covering the Mars Argo and Poppy stuff. I think that it did a very good job of being inspired heavily by those events, but showing how both girls were victims in their own way in many ways, and then also not showing any empathy at all for the Titanic Sinclair stand-in in this movie. I think they handled all of that perfectly well, but as I said, if you guys haven't seen this movie, you should go check it out. It is a very good movie. I think it's one of the more enjoyable installments of the Into the Dark films, and most of them are pretty unwatchable, so take that with a grain of salt, but I do think this one is really good. It's lower budget, but like, watch it. I do think it's fun and you might enjoy it, and I think it's a little bit of a hidden gem that people don't talk about enough, honestly. But anyways, that about wraps up this video, and you guys are enjoying the Behind the Horror series. This is the first episode, like I said, and if you have ideas for future films that you would want me to cover in this series, now that you kind of know the format, and I explained it a little bit at the beginning of the video, you should let me know in the comments down below if you can think of any other films that you want me to research and cover for you guys. As well, if you guys have requests for other movies for me to cover as well, leave those down in the comments right below as well. Like, I'm open to any and all suggestions. I just wrapped up my Final Destination series pretty much. I just got to get Final Destination Bloodlines out for you guys now, and I plan on doing that after I see it in theaters, so hopefully that video comes out here very, very soon for you guys. But after that, I'm going to start releasing my 28 days later videos. So if you guys were anyone that voted for those in my polls, like, don't worry, I didn't forget about you. Those videos are still coming. I just like to throw these solo reviews in between all that stuff. But if you like this video, it'd mean a lot if you gave it a like, comment, and if you want to see more content just like this, then I would love if you subscribed. I would love to have you guys on the channel. I cover anything and everything horror. As I say in every video at this point, I try to make that more than clear here. I hope to see you guys on the next one. Take care.